There's a moment you never forget. The exact second when your body stops feeling like yours. For me, it was a notification sound. A tiny pop. A harmless little ping. The kind of casual sound that could have been anything. A meme, a coffee order, an update. But that sound was the moment my world tilted. My name is Sandra Wilson. I'm 27 years old. I make cappuccinos for a living at a quiet little coffee shop with brick walls and steamed milk warmth. The kind of place where the espresso machine hisses like old plumbing and everyone pretends to be happier than they really are. And I have always been careful with my words. Quiet. Measured. Controlled. Anger has always scared me. Before I continue my story, tell me this. If someone publicly mocked your body and made you feel uncomfortable in your own skin, would you swallow the hurt? Or would you finally show your teeth? Share your honest opinion in the comments. I want to hear your perspective. I was raised to believe that composure was dignity, that silence was the high road. But you know what nobody warns you about? Sometimes silence isn't peace. Sometimes silence is erasure. I learned that night. I saw myself, not through my mirror, but through my sister's camera lens. It was a video. She thought she was being funny. Just 8 seconds long. 8 seconds of her laughing at me while I walked to the fridge. Her caption said, "Heavy steps incoming, somebody lock the fridge." The comments were already rolling. Laugh emojis, little fat jokes, people tagging others. They were laughing at me, at a body I live inside every second of my existence. In one moment, I became content. Not a person, not her sister, not her blood. Content. And she posted it publicly. And she smiled. That was the part I can't forget. That smile. That tiny twist of her mouth, gleeful, pleased, because the laughing strangers were giving her attention. I just stood there, phone in my hand, heart tightened into something metallic and unfamiliar. I wasn't angry yet. Anger would come later. That night, I only felt unseen, as if the world had shifted 3 degrees to the left and I suddenly lost my footing inside myself. Because if your own sister sees you as a joke, what are you supposed to see? Here at Revenge Bible, we explore real psychological stories of betrayal and justice. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss our next emotional reckoning.
Before all of this, before the clip, before the comments, before the humiliation, life was small, quiet, and almost painfully ordinary. I used to wake up at 5:45 every morning because I liked arriving at the cafe 15 minutes before we opened. There was something comfortable about empty spaces before the world woke up and before anyone had opinions. That was my version of control. The hiss of steam, the sound of water meeting metal, the soft amber color of bulbs that hadn't yet been drowned by sunlight. Those were the first moments of every day for me. I would journal during those minutes. Not paragraphs, just small sentences, emotional temperature checks, a few lines to anchor myself before the day got loud. It was never meant to be deep. Sometimes I wrote things like, "Today I hope I stay gentle," or "Today I want to be kind to my body." My therapist once told me, "Routines are a form of self-respect." I believed her, because even though I wasn't the confident girl, I was the girl who tried. My sister, though, she lived differently. Trisha loved volume. She talked fast, walked fast, posted fast. She lived like she was always slightly late to a party no one else was invited to. She had that restless energy people mistake for charisma. Strangers loved her instantly. She was magnetic, and she knew it. And when she discovered that social media rewarded loudness, the world became her stage. She was 21, but certain she was destined for notoriety. She didn't study fame, she didn't analyze it, she didn't earn it, she simply expected it. Her feed was filled with clips, random, chaotic, unfiltered, chasing whatever trend had a pulse that week. Challenges, fast edits, reaction videos. Her entire identity became external. My mother called it confidence. I called it performance. But we didn't clash growing up. Actually, we were close. When she was younger, I braided her hair, I helped her pick outfits. I was the one she cried to when her first boyfriend ditched her for a girl who could drive. I was the safe one, the steady one, the soft landing. We were not built to be enemies. That's why the betrayal cut differently. It wasn't just humiliation, it was inversion. The girl who once saw me as a protector now saw me as content. Before it all happened, the three of us used to have slow Sundays sometimes. My mom, Trisha, and me. Nothing spectacular. Movies, leftovers, laundry half folded on the couch. Small domestic warmth. I usually cooked something. Nothing complicated. Roasted vegetables, baked chicken, or pasta with olive oil and garlic. I always tried to make healthier versions of comfort food. It was subtle self-care. Nobody asked me for it, but I did it anyway. Those Sundays were when I felt human. When I felt like I wasn't an embarrassment. When I felt like I belonged inside my own life. People think humiliation is a single moment. A shock, a sudden slap, an abrupt before-after. But humiliation is cumulative before it becomes catastrophic. And if I'm honest, I can trace the microfractures long before the clip ever went viral. Little jabs. Do you want the larger size? No judgment, but you'll probably want the larger size. Or, you walk like your knees are tired. Always delivered as humor. Always disguised by the tone of, "I'm just playing." But sometimes pain arrives in comedy's costume. At first, I brushed it off. I told myself, She's young, she's careless, she doesn't understand impact yet. But compassion has a shelf life. And I didn't realize the expiration date was approaching. While I worked my modest barista job, building routines, building small emotional scaffolding, Trisha was trying to manufacture a digital personality. She wanted her existence to feel cinematic. She wanted an audience. And audiences reward the extreme. And when she learned that quick, sharp jokes about fatness get comments, that was the moment her moral compass uncalibrated. She didn't hate me. She just realized she could monetize me. My mother, intentionally or not, fed the problem. She didn't intervene because she liked peace more than justice. She liked harmony more than honesty. She told me once, very casually, while cleaning the kitchen, "Don't be so sensitive, Sandra. People joke. It's not personal." Isn't it interesting how the people who are never the target always think something isn't personal? I didn't fight. I didn't explain. I didn't stomp or cry or slam any door. I went silent, thinking silence was the moral high road, thinking maturity meant restraint. I journaled about it instead. That was my background. That was my baseline. I was a quiet woman trying to exist gently. I believed that kindness would be reciprocated. I thought blood guaranteed loyalty. I thought family was a safe noun. But I was wrong. And the proof of that would arrive in 8 seconds of shaky, low-quality footage.
The betrayal wasn't just the clip. It was everything around the clip, the framing, the intention, the laughter inside her voice, the way she looked at her audience as if she was performing, not documenting. It happened on a Sunday afternoon, the kind that should have been safe. I had just finished roasting vegetables. They were cooling on the counter. The house smelled like rosemary and garlic, and I was actually feeling good, which is the ironic part. I remember thinking my shoulders felt lighter that day. My body didn't feel like a costume. My breathing felt simple. I'd slept well. My mother and Trisha were on the couch. A show was playing in the background. I wasn't even paying attention to them. I was just existing in my own quiet slice of space. I walked to the fridge to grab lemon slices to finish the vegetables. I didn't see the phone pointed at me. I didn't see her hand angled. I didn't know I was being recorded. If I had known, I would have walked differently. I would have straightened my spine. I would have softened how my heel touched the floor. I would have pretended not to care about my body. But I didn't know. So I just walked, unaware, unguarded, normal. My existence was honest in that moment. And that honesty, she weaponized. She waited until I reached the fridge door. She zoomed slightly, enough to exaggerate the sway of my steps, and she whispered, almost lovingly, to the camera, "Watch this." Then she laughed. Not a laugh shared with me. Not a laugh that included me. A laugh that excluded me. A laugh aimed at me, projected outward like a trigger for strangers. She already knew she would post it. That laugh wasn't spontaneous. That laugh was strategy. I didn't discover the betrayal immediately. She didn't show it to me. She didn't tease me directly. She didn't warn me. She didn't tell me she captured footage of my body for the internet to consume. She acted normal. We ate together. We talked about nothing. She complimented the seasoning. She scrolled through her phone, smirking occasionally, and I had no idea she was editing my body into her punchline. Hours later, that was when the notification came, and not to me, but to her. Her follower count jumped. She gasped dramatically, like she'd just discovered she'd been accepted into a film school audition. Whoa, oh my God, I think this one's taking off. I didn't think she was talking about me. I assumed it was a trending audio or some random harmless clip. I didn't even get up from the couch. Then another notification sound. Then another. Then another. She started laughing again, that same sharp laugh, the one that cuts with no knife needed. So I asked, casually, curious, unaware, "What clip did you post?" She looked at me, and there was a flicker in her eyes, a hesitation so tiny it almost wasn't there. She didn't answer. She just slid her phone into her hoodie pocket and excused herself, like she suddenly remembered an errand. That was the first mini alarm bell. Then my mother said, without really looking up, without a trace of concern, "She's just having fun, Sandra. You know how she is." The phrase, "you know how she is how people excuse cruelty. But I didn't push. I didn't investigate. I didn't demand transparency. I simply went to bed. At 1:13 a.m., my phone buzzed. That sound, that tiny digital flick, was the exact moment flashbacks would eventually attach themselves to. A girl from high school, someone I hadn't spoken to in 3 years, sent me a DM. It said, "Hey, is this you? Are you doing a skit? I hope you're okay." I blinked. Confusion first, then stomach drop. My hands suddenly felt disconnected from the rest of me, as if sensation had been diluted. I clicked the link, and there I was, from behind, like prey. The caption in her handwriting glowed at me like a burn. "Heavy steps incoming. Somebody lock the fridge." People were laughing, aggressively, impersonally, cruelly, freely. My body a joke. My existence content. And it wasn't random. It wasn't accidental. Trisha had chosen her angle, her frame, her moment. And she hadn't just posted me. She posted my vulnerability. She packaged my body for applause. It felt like standing outside my own life, watching it get auctioned. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I sat in silence, phone in hand, while the comments multiplied. She didn't just betray my trust. She commodified my self-worth. She traded my self-worth for engagement metrics. And she did it with a smile.
The first few hours after the clip went live, I didn't know what to do. My chest tightened in ways I didn't recognize. My hands shook when I tried to text friends, the words caught in my throat. I felt disoriented, like someone had lifted me out of my own life and set me down somewhere unfamiliar, where the rules didn't make sense. I replayed the clip over and over, not out of curiosity, but as a way to anchor myself to reality. Each time I watched it, the betrayal became sharper. It wasn't just the joke or the cruel timing or the way she framed me as less than human. It was the intent. That was what made it worse. She had calculated it, planned it, anticipated the reactions, and I was the instrument. The next morning, I walked into the cafe, my usual sanctuary, but the air felt different. Every smile felt heavier. Every regular customer's casual remark sounded loaded. Even the hiss of the espresso machine seemed pointed, almost judgmental. I realized that how much of my life I had been living quietly, expecting the people I trusted most to protect me from humiliation. And suddenly that expectation had been stripped away.
I started noticing small signs that had always been there, overlooked because I refused to see them. The way she would angle her phone when we took selfies together, the way she lingered on her camera roll after I left the room, the way her laugh sometimes included an audience that wasn't physically there. Each tiny detail suddenly aligned, forming a pattern I had been too naive to recognize before. Then I found the first concrete proof. While tidying the living room, I noticed a folder on her laptop labeled Clips, Funny Stuff. I opened it casually, telling myself it was harmless curiosity. Inside, there were dozens of videos. My daily life, my gestures, my meals, my walks around the kitchen. Each file had been meticulously labeled with dates and captions she intended for social media. It wasn't just me, she had others too. But what shocked me was the consistency, the method. My private moments, my unguarded self, had been cataloged for the public eye without my knowledge or consent. I felt a swirl of emotions: disbelief, anger, confusion. I wanted to confront her immediately, but something inside me, a quiet, nascent voice, told me to pause, to observe, to understand, to make sense of it before reacting. I realized this was bigger than a single act. It was a system she had created, a system in which my vulnerability became content, and the world rewarded her for it. I began documenting everything: screenshots of comments, timestamps, saved copies of videos. I created a mental map of her posting patterns. I noted which clips got more traction, which comments she engaged with, which jokes she repeated. Each observation fueled a controlled anger, a clarity that had been absent in the initial shock. I was no longer floating in disorientation. I was gathering evidence, quietly, methodically, for something that would come later. I also reached out to my therapist, who helped me process the emotional impact. She reminded me that the betrayal was not a reflection of my worth. She reminded me that anger, when harnessed correctly, could be a tool for reclaiming power, not just destruction. I took this advice seriously, treating my daily notes and screenshots as a journal of strategy as much as of pain. Small clues began to form a larger picture. The way she timed posts for prime engagement hours, the captions that implied private knowledge, the subtle edits that exaggerated movement or expression, all of it pointed to intent, premeditation, and disregard for boundaries. And the more I analyzed it, the more I realized this was a repeated behavior, not a one-off mistake. By the end of the week, what had begun as confusion became clarity. I understood not only that I had been betrayed, but that I had underestimated her cunning. I understood the depth of her moral flexibility and the precision with which she had weaponized my trust. And in that understanding, something remarkable happened. I stopped feeling like a passive victim. I began to feel like someone capable of responding, not with chaos, not with rash anger, but with strategy. The discovery didn't bring peace. Far from it. It brought focus. It brought direction. It transformed my fear into a quiet, simmering resolve. And that resolve would carry me forward, shaping the plan I would eventually set into motion. It was the first step towards reclaiming control over a life that had been made public property without my consent. In the dim light of my apartment with my laptop open and my journal beside me, I realized something essential. She had underestimated one thing: my patience, my ability to observe, to calculate, to plan. And that would be the leverage I would need to turn this betrayal into something more than pain. It would be the foundation for justice, for reclamation, for a quiet triumph that no applause or likes could ever replicate. Once I understood the depth of her betrayal, the anger inside me began to crystallize into strategy. I didn't want chaos.
I didn't want public shaming. I wanted precision, quiet, and moral clarity. Revenge isn't about immediate gratification. It's about turning betrayal into accountability without losing yourself in the process. That became my mantra. I started by cataloging everything, every clip, every caption, every notification timestamp. I noted when posts went live, the engagement they generated, and the audience response. I organized it meticulously in a private folder, labeling files by date, content type, and impact. Screenshots, saved copies, voice memos I had recorded after noticing the first clips, all of it. My goal wasn't humiliation, it was documentation, proof, a record of intent. Then I reached out to an old friend from high school, someone I trusted and who worked in digital ad integrity at a major platform. I explained, without exaggeration, what had been happening. They confirmed what I had suspected. Trisha's videos violated terms of consent and targeted harassment guidelines, though they were framed as humor. They also helped me understand how platform algorithms amplified the content, how engagement encouraged repetition, and how subtle edits made ordinary gestures appear exaggerated or comical. Knowledge is power, and this insight shifted my mindset from reactive anger to calculated action. Then I spoke to my therapist again. She guided me through emotional regulation techniques, helping me detach from the immediate sting of betrayal. I practiced meditation, journaling, and controlled breathing, transforming frustration into focus. I realized that the success of my plan depended on calm, not impulsivity. Any misstep could be twisted against me. My moral compass had to remain intact. I also enlisted a coworker from the cafe, someone reliable who always respected my integrity. Together, we devised a subtle verification system, monitoring new uploads, capturing screen recordings, and checking timestamps against social media activity logs. I wasn't looking to trap her in some cruel setup. I was collecting evidence for accountability. I wanted clarity and a record that could not be ignored. Simultaneously, I reflected on the psychological element. Trisha thrived on validation, on attention, on the thrill of public approval. If I wanted my plan to succeed, I had to work with the medium she valued most, exposure, but in a way that emphasized responsibility rather than ridicule. I brainstormed ways to show her the consequences of her actions without stooping to cruelty. I envisioned a plan that would confront her choices, reveal the truth to her audience, and simultaneously preserve my own dignity. I established a timeline. Day 1, observe and document. Day 2, consult allies and clarify legal and platform options. Day 3, prepare a repository of my evidence, screenshots, recordings, timestamps. Day 4, design the confrontation framework. It would be subtle, public enough to create awareness, private enough to avoid escalation. Each step had a purpose. Each action was deliberate. I also rehearsed my emotional responses. In the mirror, I practiced calm articulation. I anticipated questions and interruptions. I reminded myself repeatedly, my objective was not vengeance through chaos, but through accountability. I visualized the outcome, a setting where she could no longer ignore the moral weight of her actions, and that I would no longer be a silent participant in my own humiliation. Calm, deliberate, and morally balanced. This was the blueprint for reclaiming power. This was how betrayal became the starting point for justice.
When the time came to act, I felt oddly serene.
All the furious energy had already been spent on preparation. What remained was a sequence of small, deliberate motions, a choreography designed to reveal truth, not to humiliate. Step 1. Platform reporting. My friend at Ad Integrity walked me through the submission. We compiled the files, the original clip, the archived versions, the folder of labeled recordings from her laptop, screenshots of comments where she encouraged derision, and timestamps showing repeated targeting. He advised on the precise policy language to use: non-consensual imagery framed to mock a protected characteristic, coordinated harassment, monetization of private humiliation. I wrote my statement in a calm voice, attached the evidence, and submitted it to the platform's safety team. The submission felt bureaucratic and righteous at once, like signing a form that corrected an imbalance. Step 2. Accountability to sponsors. Trisha had partnerships, small brand deals for fitness wear and snack sponsors, contracts that relied on a particular public image. My coworker helped me find the contact emails. I sent each brand a short, factual message, links to the content, a summary of the issue, and a request to review their association. I did not admonish or shame. I presented facts and asked them to consider whether their brand should profit from content built on someone else's pain. That choice put pressure on the commercial incentives that had fed her behavior. Step 3. The public narrative. I could have ranted on social media. I could have posted the list of files and waited for strangers to swarm. But rage breeds spectacle, and spectacle was what had already harmed me. Instead, I chose a measured reveal. I prepared a short recorded message, not a theatrical plea, but a clear statement of experience. I described what had happened, how it had been documented, and how it felt to realize your private life is being packaged as entertainment. I did not show the most damaging footage. I refused to make myself the center of the spectacle again. My aim was not to amplify shame, but to offer context and facts. On the morning I published the statement, I sat in the kitchen with sunlight across the table. My therapist texted a small supportive emoji. My coworker waited nearby, ready to handle the incoming replies we anticipated. I clicked post. Reactions came fast. Some viewers asked questions politely. Others reacted with anger at Trisha. Brands began to respond. Within 24 hours, one sponsor paused a campaign pending review. Another sent a careful message asking for more information. The platform acknowledged receipt and said they were investigating. It felt almost procedural, like dominoes falling because the base had finally been nudged. Trisha's immediate response was predictably theatrical. She posted a story calling me overreacting and accused me of trying to ruin her. She used the language of victimhood casually, as if adoption of that stance could inoculate her from accountability. But the difference now was that her audience had context. The same followers who once laughed began to question. People who had followed her for years because they liked her personality, not cruelty, commented with confusion and disappointment. The moral calculus of attention started to tilt. Then the platform removed the original clip for violating harassment policy. The removal note was clinical. Content removed for non-consensual imagery and targeted harassment. It was not vindication in the way I had imagined. There was no audible crowd cheering, but it was a system saying this crossed a line. For me, that line being named was itself a quiet relief. The sponsor's moves carried weight. One requested a private conversation. After seeing our documentation, they publicly announced they would not renew the campaign. Another brand issued a statement about responsible partnerships. The cumulative effect was not the destruction of Trisha's life. She still had followers and she still posted. But it was a recalibration of the incentives that had made her exploit my vulnerability. The emotional apex came 2 weeks later,
At a small town hall-style livestream, a moderated conversation I agreed to participate in after careful negotiation. It wasn't a tribunal. It was an invitation extended by a creator network concerned about digital ethics. Trisha accepted. The panel included a representative from the platform, an ad integrity specialist, my old friend, the moderator, and me. I prepared my words, practiced them until they felt honest and composed, and then spoke. I did not shout. I did not cry on camera. I explained how the footage was captured, what it felt like to watch your trust be monetized, and why consent matters in the age of instant virality. I asked direct questions. Had she considered the impact of her editing choices? Did she understand how monetization can incentivize harm? The panel asked follow-ups. For the first time in public, she had to answer questions that were tethered to evidence, not to amusement. Her answers faltered. She tried defensiveness, then deflection, then a thin apology that seemed crafted more for optics than empathy. There was an awkward silence when she was presented with the catalog of files from her laptop. Viewers in the chat began to shift tone from amusement to critique. The live stream closed with a platform rep outlining stricter enforcement and creators' responsibilities. It was not theatrical revenge, it was communal accountability, an ecosystem adjusting its behavior because a boundary had been insistently, methodically named. After the panel, Trisha's engagement dipped. Some followers unfollowed, her sponsored deals were reevaluated, she posted apologies that read like PR statements. I watched these developments with a strange mix of sorrow and relief. I had not set out to destroy her. I wanted her to see the consequences of the choices she had made and to grow from them. The evidence-based approach ensured the narrative stayed focused on responsibility, not spectacle. The final stabilization came when the platform updated its policy language publicly, including clearer rules about monetizing non-consensual content and enhanced reporting mechanisms. I was anonymous in the policy update, but the change felt like a larger system righting a smaller wrong. My actions had contributed to a system-level correction. When the immediate storm passed, I did not feel triumphant in a petty way. I felt steady. I had taken humiliation and turned it into a ledger of facts and accountability. I had reclaimed my narrative without surrendering my dignity. The revenge, if you can call it that, was not a performance. It was a restoration. In quiet moments afterwards, I would sometimes think about the sound of the espresso machine, the rhythm of my mornings, the little sentences I used to write in the hush before work. Those things felt intact again, not untouched. The scar remained, but accounted for. There was justice, not spectacle. There was consequence, not chaos. And that difference mattered more than any momentary crowd's roar.
The storm of notifications, live streams, and brand inquiries eventually faded. The world moved on. Trisha posted new clips. My friends resumed their routines, and the cafe hummed with its familiar, quiet energy. But I didn't return to the old me, the one who quietly absorbed insult and pretended it didn't hurt. Something inside had shifted. I realized that revenge, in its purest form, is not about cruelty or spectacle. Revenge is power. It's the ability to reclaim your own story, to define the narrative, instead of letting someone else dictate it. And that is exactly what I had done. I had taken humiliation, something that once made me feel invisible, and transformed it into control, clarity, and dignity. For anyone watching this, take note. The words of others cannot define your worth. They can sting, they can bruise, but they do not have the authority to rewrite your story unless you allow it. My sister thought she could make me small with a few seconds of footage, a few public jokes. She believed that my silence meant submission. She underestimated me. And in that underestimation, I found my power. I journaled through every step of the plan, every observation, every carefully calculated move. That process, meticulous, patient, and intentional, became a mirror, reflecting not just my anger, but my resilience. I built confidence not by retaliation in the traditional sense, but by reclaiming agency. I proved to myself that I could control outcomes, that I could demand accountability, and that I could do so without losing the integrity of my own character. This is a lesson I want to leave you with. The people who try to diminish you, who mock or betray you, can only take what you give them. If you remain silent, passive, or reactive, you leave your story in their hands. But if you observe, strategize, and act with intention, you transform what was meant to harm into a foundation for your growth. I am not suggesting revenge for revenge's sake. I am suggesting measured, purposeful action that restores balance. I am suggesting turning humiliation into empowerment and betrayal into clarity. Through this journey, I discovered that confidence is not granted by others. It is forged through the reclamation of your own narrative. And that reclamation is more satisfying than any public applause or social media validation. Now, when I walk into the cafe, when I journal in the quiet of my apartment, or when I scroll through social media, I feel grounded. I feel anchored. I feel present. I have peace, not because the past disappeared, but because I no longer live under its shadow. I have rebuilt my narrative. I have reclaimed my voice. And I have proven that words meant to harm can instead catalyze growth, empowerment, and quiet, undeniable justice. This was my journey from invisibility to agency, from betrayal to empowerment. Revenge, when guided by calm, intelligence, and moral clarity, is not destruction. It is restoration. It is proof that you can take what was meant to diminish you and transform it into the fuel to reclaim your life. This was another story from Revenge Bible, where we turn pain into purpose and betrayal into balance. Subscribe and join us for the next transformation.